is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Tonight we begin with what could at any time now become the #1 foreign policy crisis for the United States. A nation with nuclear weapons dealing with great pressure from within, and there are fears the president will not survive, and then what? In Pakistan tonight, after days of new violence, the president there, Pervez Musharraf, has been told by a court he can't remove the Chief Justice as he had tried to do. That will fuel the pro-democracy movement. They want Musharraf out, and all of this puts the U.S. in a very tough spot after supporting Musharraf for so long. It's a shaky, some would say dangerous situation there tonight. Our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell, is at the State Department tonight to start us off. Andrea, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. The Bush administration has poured $10 billion into President Musharraf's government since 9/11. But now critics say that President Musharraf may not survive politically, and the U.S. has no plan B. In Islamabad today, elated supporters mobbed Pakistan's Chief Justice, fired by Musharraf but reinstated today by the courts, an unprecedented show of independence. And an historic victory for opponents to the embattled president.
It's a big blow to the Musharraf regime and government.
In addition to the growing pro-democracy movement, Musharraf is facing a rash of suicide bombings and clashes with Islamic extremists. All told, almost 300 killed in the last 2 weeks alone.
Musharraf finds himself isolated. The secular political parties have turned against him. The Islamic extremists have turned against him. Now only has the army and the United States still backing him.
But this week, Washington blamed Musharraf for permitting al-Qaeda to regroup in tribal areas of his country. Today, Pakistan's ambassador strongly rejected that claim.
That's totally false, incorrect, absolutely. I would say, I've used it once before, I'll use it again. It's crap.
It's crap?
It's crap. If somebody says that the government of Pakistan is helping the bad guys. Ridiculous.
Yesterday, the White House even suggested taking U.S. military action against al-Qaeda targets inside Pakistan. What would Pakistan say to American troops on the ground within your territory to go after al-Qaeda?
A big no.
In fact, U.S. predators in the air and covert forces on the ground are already hunting al-Qaeda inside Pakistan. But experts say the regime would resist a larger American ground force.
They will use every weapon at their disposal, including nuclear weapons.
And Pakistan is a nuclear power. In addition to small nuclear weapons for the battlefield, new satellite pictures show Pakistan is building another reactor to greatly expand its current stockpile of approximately 40 nuclear bombs. That, of course, is the big fear, that Musharraf will not survive and that his nuclear weapons could get into the hands of terrorists in one of the most dangerous regions of the world. Brian?
Andrea Mitchell starting us off this Friday night at the State Department. Andrea, thank you. And for more on this, we're joined here in the studio tonight by the president of the Council on Foreign Relations, Richard Haass. He's a veteran of the State Department and the National Security Council in more than one administration. Richard, I'd like to begin with a graphic, a map, showing us what neighborhood of the world we're talking about here. It is, on a good day, a dangerous place. Look at the neighbors. You have, of course, nuclear power India next door, then Pakistan, China not far away. To the west is the Middle East, already in crisis in part. I asked you recently, of all the trouble spots in the world, what keeps you awake at night? You answered Pakistan. Why?
Well, exactly for the reason your map shows. Pakistan's emerged as the pivotal states in the world. It's central to the war on terror. It's become the safe haven for al-Qaeda. It's got several dozen nuclear weapons. It has a poor relationship with nuclear-armed India. It's central in some ways to the whole struggle for legitimacy and stability in the Islamic world. There's lots of ways in which Pakistan could become a nightmare for us, either in the war on terrorism or even worse, potentially, Brian, a loss of political control, a central government control over its nuclear weapons. That's the nightmare that keeps me and others up at night.
As you know, a lot of foreign policy professionals under their breath say Musharraf is the devil you know if you're the United States. We're really in a box here, aren't we?
Well, he may be the devil we know, but I think the time's about up. We're beginning to see the beginning of the end of the Musharraf era after 7 or 8 years. He's seen as a puppet in Pakistan, even though we're frustrated with him. Politically, what you talked about on tonight's news, he's lost a tremendous amount of face. The military's unhappy with him increasingly because you can't keep order. So I think he's about to gradually lose power. But as you say, this is perhaps the single toughest foreign policy problem the United States faces, even tougher than Iraq, tougher than Iran, simply because of the stakes, and it's not clear there's any good options either with them or without them.
Natural question, when Musharraf, if Musharraf goes, who's next, and how much does that matter to the United States?
Well, that's the only potential opportunity here. My hunch is if he goes, he's replaced by another senior military man. It'll be the Army. It's the most powerful institution in Pakistan. The interesting question is, will Musharraf's successor, if and when he arrives, try to strike a deal with the civilian leadership? If he does, that could begin some sort of a transition to not democracy, but some sort of shared power, which might create greater support in the public and might create a basis for taking on the extremists. The real challenge to authority in Pakistan is not good guys. It's not liberal pro-democracy forces. The real challenge, and the thing that has us worried, is the extremists. It's radicals, the people who are camped out in the West, the people who are fighting the war. Afghanistan.
Thank you for coming by and taking our questions tonight. Richard Haass, the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. It became even more clear today that if